Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome everybody, welcome to the IGF 2020 and to this inaugural meeting of the Dynamic Coalition on Data and Trust, an initiative of URID with the cooperation of many stakeholders today. I just want to do a few housekeeping things before we get into the substantive discussions. Of course, for those of you who have been to the IGF, we don't have the opportunity to all be together. Neither do we have the opportunity to have the sort of the full roundtable experience where no voice is privileged and every voice is welcome and able to participate. We're in a constrained environment, and I think we should all thank the members of the IGF, MAG and the Secretariat for doing such a tremendous job to get the IGF online fully this year. We're in a sort of webinar format, I think, in the Zoom environment, and that means that if you are marked as an attendee rather than a panelist, unfortunately, we're not able to give you the microphone or camera on this occasion. Actually, Henriette is saying we can elevate all participants to panelists if we want more inclusion. I would really welcome that. Could I just ask the remote moderators, Timona, would you be able to do that and elevate our attendees so that everybody can join the conversation? That would be most appreciated. Okay, my name is Emily Taylor. I'm the CEO of Oxford Information Labs and one of the organisers of this session alongside Giovanni Seppia of URID. So everyone, if you would like to take the floor after we run through the initial panel presentations, please either raise your hand using the raise hand. I don't know if we've got the raise hand actually. Or type in the Q&A. I think this is better. Type in the Q&A if you'd like to take the floor, and then we can arrange to unmute you. I think we'll figure it out. Okay. So back in 2006, I was privileged to be part of the first MAG in the IGF under the brilliant chairmanship of Nitin Desai, and that's really where the idea of dynamic coalitions first took hold. And there is a lot in that concept. The dynamism is both in the groupings of people, they can come in and out according to the subject, but also the themes. But really it is a label for a coalition of the willing who all want to gather around particular issues and explore them in the safe space that the IGF provides for discussion, for exploration of issues without the strain and stresses of, particular outcomes being held or the negotiation that is there in many environments. Now, what URID and we wanted to do this year was to bring together people to explore issues around data and trust. And we've deliberately kept that to be a very open and very wide scope. Data, if you're in the domain industry, as many of us are here today, data would immediately take your mind to registration data, to accuracy, to issues of DNS abuse arising from poor data and the impact that that has on trust. If you are coming from more of a platform environment, more of somebody like Lisa Maria from the Oxford Internet Institute here, you would immediately be thinking about, well, data as information, the relationship between data points and bringing those together to form into information, and also the impact that that has on trust. What is poor information? What is untruthful? Misinformation, disinformation? So what we wanted to do is to bring these two communities together, the domain name industry operating very much below the level of the application of content, but yet very connected with it. and also the platforms which have been studied almost as an internet in their own right, whereas they are all, of course, part of the internet that we are supporting in the Internet Governance Forum. So that's really what we had in mind, and Giovanni will introduce these ideas and explore them further. Let me just introduce our speakers who are going to kick off these themes. First of all, I'll call on Giovanni Seppia, who's the External Relations Manager at URID, a position he's held since 2007. He coordinates a team of 20 from all over Europe who manage their relations with registrars and registrants, communications, marketing, international relations, and also liaison with the European institutions. Prior to that, Giovanni was the general manager at Centre. He was also involved for many years at the Italian registry.it and also at ICANN as well. His background is with a master's in EU policies and programs at the Venice International University. So we're also hoping to have Pablo Bello, who is a Chilean economist and has had a background in working with the Chilean government from the late 90s to 2010. He's currently working with WhatsApp and has also had a number of roles, including on the MAG and also the Global Commission on Internet Governance. Lisa Maria Neudert is a doctoral candidate at the Oxford Internet Institute and a core researcher in the Computational Propaganda Project, and has been exploring all aspects of public and private governance surrounding disinformation, whether that's to do with elections, electoral interference, or currently this year very much focusing on the so-called infodemic. Antoine Chotarov is also a PhD student studying economics and the relationship between innovation and competitiveness. He's joining us today as a member of URID's youth committee, and he's very welcome in that role. But he also is a man of parts, having founded 3 companies in the fields of innovation and information technologies, and has chaired several not-for-profit organizations, and is a former representative of all students in the biggest economic university in Bulgaria. Welcome to you today, Antoine. And last but not least, we have Alberto Rabakin, who's a program officer at the European Commission's Directorate General for Communications Networks, Content and Technology. Alberto's involved in designing and implementing the Commission's policy to tackle online disinformation, so highly relevant to today's discussions. And prior to joining the Commission, Alberto was a research scientist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We also, I'm expecting floor points to be made by Peter van Roster of Centre, who's the General Manager of Centre. Very much welcome today. And also I'm hoping that Graham Bunton of Two Cows will say a few words, but I'm aware it's extremely early for participants from North America. So that's the introductions. Delighted to have you all here today for this inaugural session. We're going to be talking about the impact of the pandemic and disinformation and how that brings in aspects of the DNS and also platforms. And I hope we can have a truly interactive discussion with you all here today. So with that, let me call on Giovanni Seppia to just introduce the Dynamic Coalition and also focus on the domain name industry response to the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for the nice introduction. Indeed, when URID, with all your support, we have been attending the IGF for many years and contributing to IGF in different forms. And this year, with all the pandemic, we thought it was a good opportunity to start a dynamic coalition on data and trust, which are two areas that are not so much covered by the dynamic coalition after having assessed what are the dynamic coalition that are functioning at present. So the objective of this dynamic coalition is indeed to explore the difficult balance between data and trust from a multi-stakeholder perspective. So not only registries, as you read, which is the registry manager of .eu in Latin and Cyrillic and in Greek, but also from the perspective of other stakeholders, including the youth perspective and including the institutional perspective. If you do not mind, I'd like to open this session with a tribute to somebody who has passed away in the past 24 hours, who's Marilyn Cade. Marilyn has been an active member of the IGF from the very beginning. And she passed away, and as I said, it's a difficult balance between data and trust. And I remember that that Marilyn was one of the strongest people I ever met when it comes to freedom of expression. So many years ago, during an ICANN public forum, when the ICANN public forums were really live debates, she had really a strong and very, let's say, vibrant exchange of views with Vint Cerf, who was the chair of the ICANN board. We're talking about 15 years ago. And then I was working for ICANN indeed at that time. So I approached Marilyn. I said, Marilyn, don't you think you were, a bit too harsh on Vint? And she said, Giovanni, freedom of expression comes first. And this is, this is something important to acknowledge and understand that indeed, freedom of expression is as important as making sure that, there's a good balance between data checks and trust. And there is also another sentence of one of the latest IGF she has participated in. And I'm quoting this sentence from Marilyn's intervention. She said, the skills needed to be a discerning consumer of information sources on the internet are not taught at any level in the education system, regardless of the country you are living in. And this is so much true, because again, nobody's telling us how to, let's say, discern, assess, ponder the information that we are literally bombed from the internet. And this is, about data indeed. So all the data we receive on a daily basis from different sources, from different online sources. So, just a tribute to somebody who has contributed a lot to the IGF and to the whole internet dialogue. So thanks a lot to Marilyn. That said, at URID, we are the registry manager of the .eu, as I said, in Latin, Greek, and Cyrillic. When the whole pandemic thing started, we work under appointment of the European Commission. And when the whole pandemic started, indeed, there were great concerns about the data that may have been circulated about the pandemic, and also may have been associated to domain names, and in our case, to .eu domain names. So we have started a process at URID to check the quality of the data. And the process led us to prevent the delegation of about a bit over, to date, 5,000 domain names. URID has currently about 3.6 million .eu domain names registered. And out of the several hundred thousand of domain names that have been registered since April, we delayed the delegation of about 5,000 because those 5,000 contained keywords that are and were associated to the pandemic. Which doesn't mean that those keywords, those domain names were somehow associated to abuses. But however, it was deemed appropriate to check the data of the registrant, and therefore, so we did. And we have to say that the quantity of domain names that we have reported to law enforcement authorities that again possibly are associated to abuses and are also associated to the current pandemic is really minimal. So we have seen that out of all the domain names, only 0.71% of those that we have reported to law enforcement authorities are associated to possible abuses and as well as to the pandemic. We have also, started a great dialogue with all our stakeholders to see how we can improve the quality of the data in our database, and also to make sure that the .eu is seen as the domain name of a trustworthy environment. And we believe that there are some takeaways of the past months. Those takeaways are, let's say, takeaways that are common whenever you start any assessment or any investigation, any action. The first one being that the ecosystem of the DNS should be seen as a sort of family ecosystem. So it's better to work as in a family with a great level of cooperation among all the stakeholders involved. So it's not just a registry operator job, but it's also a registrar operator. And going back to Marilyn, indeed, it's a matter of educating also the end user, the registrant, the consumer, to make sure that they are aware that there is the need to have data quality for their own safety, not because somebody likes to chase people until they give confirmation of the data, but just because it's their own safety that comes first, and because that comes first, they need to provide reliable data just in case something happens and you need to contact them. And also another important takeaway of what we have been doing with all these checks on data is that there should be, let's say, the definition of clear goals. So let's say the effectiveness of any measure should be always linked to clear goals. Otherwise, you end up really, fishing in the ocean without, having in mind how many, fish you like to fish, and therefore, because of that, you end up doing a small action which has not so much an effect on the entire system. We have, as I said, there is the need for greater cooperation. And what I said, we have had a great dialogue with our registrar community to improve what we are doing. And I do believe that a great dialogue in the data and trust environment is needed to make sure that in the future, all the actors of the internet DNS ecosystem, they work together to ensure the quality of data, but at the same time, by ensuring the quality of data, they also increase the trust in our environment. So that said, I don't want to take any longer. I know there are other speakers. I'm happy to answer any question later on. And again, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all for joining this Dynamic Coalition inaugural meeting. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, and thank you also for that wonderful tribute to Marilyn Cade, who was, such a figure in this environment and a friend to so many of us. And thank you for mentioning her and bringing her into your comments today. But very interesting, efforts being made by URIT, and I think for some other registries, to try to spot domain names linked to possible misinformation. I'm going to come back to you in the chat on those percentages, and also I think the levels of cooperation and efforts to create data quality. So thank you very much for those introductory remarks. Pablo Bello is our next speaker from WhatsApp. I'm just double checking, Pablo, that you've got audio and video. If not, we can skip.
I'm
to
here.
Ah, you are here. Great.
Yes, I'm here.
Very warm welcome to you today, Pablo. Thank you for joining this and to discuss COVID-19 trends in the social media environment, and particularly from your viewpoint in your role in WhatsApp in Latin America. The floor is yours, Pablo. Very welcome, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. For me, it's a pleasure to participate in this panel with all of you and to be more involved in the dynamic coalition. For me, will be awesome. So thank you very much for the invitation. As a former MAC member, actually, I'm very proud to participate in this new IGF in this weird, complex year that we are facing now. So. Very, very happy to be with you. Well, the issues that we are debating today are quite important, of course, and deeply linked with the pandemic we are suffering. Nevertheless, the underneath challenge we are facing are not new. Started many times before COVID, and of course, even many times before internet at all. We are facing a crisis in trust that is affecting the core institution of our societies. And nobody could say that the current situation of the world has been caused by internet or the digital platform at all. Nevertheless, misinformation, it's a critical issue. It's very important. Has always existed. It's nothing new. But of course, in this super connected world, misinformation could fly faster and farther. And this is a really important problem. It's important to mention also that we still don't know how misinformation really affects our perception of reality and how, in the real world, how implications has in our lives. Some time ago, Wired published an article saying that digital echo chambers are killing the democracy. But after that, this article is from 4 years ago, I think so. After that, many researchers have found that connected people actually are receiving information from more diverse sources of news outlets than the analog people. So this echo chamber and misinformation issues, there are a problem, of course, but it's not totally clear how these are affecting our real life. I think there is still some sociological or psychological research that is needed to understand completely how misinformation could lead to act people in a different way, and this is still inconclusive. Nevertheless, we could agree that misinformation is a big problem to all of us, for citizens, for civil society, governments, for technical community, and of course for platforms. And it's totally important, and this is what we are doing. Is critical to fight against that. So let me talk a little about COVID, the pandemic, this year, this complex year for all of us, and what are we doing to fight against misinformation in WhatsApp. The first one, of course, this is nothing new, but lockdowns and quarantines have changed the way people interact between them. This is our new normal. This is connected, is seated in front of a screen. The need to connect has been more important now than even before. So to be connected this is not the topic of our planet, but still to close the digital divide is pretty important. It's even more important because of that. Digital platforms, and WhatsApp in particular, have become a critical infrastructure to allow us to be in touch with friends and relatives, to work, for education, to contact health services, to shop. some data that I want to share that I think is amazing. WhatsApp at the beginning of the year surpassed the number of 2 billion users worldwide. And at the beginning of the pandemic, and when this lockdown started, WhatsApp surpassed, and actually this is our new normal, actually 100 billion message by day. 100 billion message by day. I think this is huge. This is 5 times the peak of the SMS system has in the whole history of the SMS platform solution. So it's huge. And in many parts of the world, WhatsApp has become a lifeline for small and medium business dealing with the effects of the lockdown. But still, 40% or more than 40% of the world population is unconnected. And in many places of the world, WhatsApp and digital platforms are the only way that people can interact and to participate in the e-commerce and to buy goods and services and so on. So COVID has accelerated the digitization of the world economy. And this, of course, makes our current debate about trust even more important than ever. I think the question that I think it's the purpose of this actually dynamic coalition is how can we restore trust in the digital ecosystem, in the institutions, in the governments, in our neighbors. It's not only a digital problem; it's a real problem that is facing many parts of the world, maybe the world completely. We will live. And in WhatsApp, we believe trust rests at first time in the integrity and security of our communications. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but of course, the digital footprint is everywhere. We are doing so much more online, so there is much more we have to protect. And this is what, and this is why WhatsApp and others in our digital ecosystem are making such a big push to protect a strong end-to-end encryption in front of policymakers around the world. When you encrypt message end-to-end, it means that only the sender and the user can see message that they exchange. And we are facing an intensified pressure from some governments to develop backdoors to access encrypted content based on broad promises regarding how the technology works. And from our point of view, there is no such thing as a backdoor just for good guys. If there is a backdoor, criminals, hackers, financial fraudsters, and hostile governments will find ways to exploit it. Weakening encryption will put people at risk. And we believe that encryption is totally linked with trust and the debate that we are facing today. But we don't believe that there is a trade-off between privacy and security. If we lose privacy, weakening encryption, in the name of security, we lose both. We need to continue working in technical tools to be more effective in the fight of digital crimes without putting risk one of the core technologies that protect privacy and security, which are both critical components on how trust is built. So my first point is, it's very important in order to protect trust, in order to allow us to live in this digital world we are living on. Security, safety, privacy are core components, and encryption is a relevant part of that. So over that, how misinformation, of course, is one of our big most important challenge. The World Health Organization called the infodemic. So how are we dealing with this infodemic? 4 points that I want to raise today for ideas. The first one is the most powerful tool to fight against misinformation is to have trustable channels of accurate information. So one priority to us is to offer these channels inside the platform. The second one is how to improve the way of the platform works to minimize the risk of bad behaviors linked with misinformation. Third, how to offer more privacy controls to the users in order to allow every one of us to be more protected, to misinformation that is spreading in the platform. And 4, increase awareness and to create more tools to manage, to allow users to handle, to manage misinformation. Coming to these 4 points. Regarding the first one, I really believe that the most important tool to fight misinformation is to offer users accurate information, to have this channel with official data, especially in a health-related issues that the COVID pandemic. It's pretty important to offer these channels in an easy way to allow people to receive the right information against about the pandemic. So this is why WhatsApp worked with the World Health Organization to set up a chatbot that we launched in April this year, a very easy to use chatbot on WhatsApp in the main language of the world, in all the official United Nations language, with a lot of information about the more basic questions and even more complex questions about the pandemic for the users. At the same time, WhatsApp partnered with health ministries in over 100 national and subnational governments and administration, launching these chatbots with automatic information that people can navigate on. And this was very important, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. At the beginning, WhatsApp received more than 120 million messages a week on these particular channels. And actually, some authorities in many parts of the world started to innovate using these chatbots. For example, Buenos Aires City, they create a chatbot on WhatsApp, very traditional, in the same way of the World Health Organization one, but then they added an option to create an interaction between a health professional with the citizens to ask to resolve some doubts, and even to start some treatments. They implemented a triage on the chat. And the impact of this chatbot using this triage was huge, especially in the context of the pandemic, because of course the pressure over the health infrastructure was pretty high, and they will be able to manage more than 75,000 COVID-related consultations over the chatbot in the first months. But also, and this is not 100% health related, but it's a critical issue in our time, and that was worsening during the pandemic. Domestic violence has been a very problematic situation worldwide, and WhatsApp works. We work with the Chilean government and the Argentinian governments to develop a channel on WhatsApp that is secure, that is private, and it's protected by encryption, and is silent to allow women in danger to connect with the authorities using WhatsApp. I think this was one of my most important projects for me this year. I think this was the impact was huge. Coming back to the second, I will finish very shortly. I think, yeah. In the platform itself, I think this is important. WhatsApp introduced a lot of adjustments, a lot of new features in order to reduce virality. And this is something that I want to mention, because in April this year, WhatsApp reduced the number of messages that someone can resend. If a message is shared more than 5 times, the app itself reduced the ability to share this message to just one person per time. And doing this change alone, this reduced in 70% the number of highly forwarded messages in WhatsApp. So this contributes to reduce virality, and to reduce virality, of course, it contributes to fight misinformation. And finally, I think it is also important in terms of provide better information, accurate information, is partnership with fact checkers and traditional mainstream media in order to offer more tools, more channels, better information to citizens worldwide. For us in WhatsApp, to protect the integrity of the private communication, of the private messaging platform is critical. It's very important. This is why we are fighting for encryption, and this is why we are introducing a lot of new features and creating new partnership with different entities, with the United Nations, with fact checkers worldwide, to offer better information to citizens, especially regarding the pandemic. And yeah, this is what we are doing. I'm very happy to be with you, and if there are more questions at the end, very happy to answer it.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for setting the scene, how things are looking with WhatsApp. And I can see that your remarks are already getting the chat very active, and I hope that we will be able to hear from some of those people in a little while. I'd like to come back to you on closed groups and how, you know, the contrast between WhatsApp as a sort of closed and encrypted environment compared to the more public platforms, and how you spot virality and misinformation within that sort of very, what to the outside world is a closed environment. But I think that your remarks lead very, very well into our next speaker, Lisa Maria Newdirt, from the Oxford Internet Institute's Computational Propaganda Unit. Lisa, you have been looking at all aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic, building on your unit's work in relation to electoral interference. So thank you for attending today, for your support to this dynamic coalition. The floor is yours. Please introduce your remarks. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lisa Maria Newdirt from the Oxford Internet Institute. Thank you very much for a very interesting start to this panel. I am going to contribute a little bit about our research on COVID-19 using public data from social media networks. And I have also brought some slides with me today, which I will share right now. And I think that works. Great. So basically, I'm part of a project at the Oxford Internet Institute that has been studying misinformation during elections. We have been doing that since about 2014, and obviously got a lot of traction with that work in 2016. And more recently, as Emily also already said in the introduction, we have focused on the spread of misinformation on COVID-19, because obviously there has been a whole lot, and I'll talk about some of the work that we did today. So where are we coming from? We are firm believers that misinformation is not just foreign interference. It is not just any sort of hostile actors that are doing that with an intention, but we very much also have different culprits. We have algorithms and big data enabled tools that are really optimized for junk news and disinformation because it's so engaging. We have alternative news media outlets that are doing very well over these social media algorithms, and that are also having economic incentives to that work. And of course, and I think the last day has shown that again, we really have a mainstream problem with disinformation. Some have branded it as politics of post-truth, but we definitely see political leadership, both in authoritarian regimes, but also in democracies, disseminating all sorts of conspiratorial or misleading information, and often they do that through social media. So why COVID-19? I think by now the phrase infodemic has become quite widely known. It was phrased by Antonio Guterres from the World Health Organization, saying that COVID-19, yes, is an infodemic, is a pandemic, but we also have an additional layer, which is this infodemic of misleading misinformation that is spreading on social media at a time where we really have a lot of citizens seeking news, seeking information, and often using the internet and social media for it. Our project at the OII has been doing a bunch of different things. One of them was we have done weekly briefings on coronavirus misinformation. We've done that every week from April till August. And basically what we did, we wanted to see what is the level of factual information, what is the level of junk news that we're seeing, and then also what is the level of state-backed outlets reporting about COVID-19. So a state-backed outlet, for example, is a Russia Today, but we also covered outlets from China, from Iran, from Turkey, where we do know they're funded by the government and they are essentially propaganda tools. So please do look that up if you are interested in that. It's on our comprop.oii.ox.ac.uk page. We also looked more into video-based misinformation on YouTube. We have a working paper on that. We also have a commentary paper on that. Very interesting here also, we looked a little bit into how platforms are enforcing their own terms of service and terms of conditions. So are platforms actually taking content down, and how long does it take them to take that content down if it's illegal, if it's against their terms of service? And then the paper I will speak more about today is actually a paper that I've authored with Emily Taylor, which is on optimizing for an infodemic. What are web and search engine strategies that are making COVID-19 misinformation so visible? So going into this, we sort of knew, okay, there is a lot of misinformation that we're seeing on social media, but what about search and what about the web? So search engine optimization is something that has been around for a very, very long time. It has not been studied as much as the Facebooks, the Twitters, when it comes to the spread of misinformation. So our question was, how can we see search engine optimization being used by professional news outlets on the one hand, and then by junk news and disinformation pages on the other hand? Then what impact do third-party links have on the reach of junk news sources? I'll explain that in a little bit. And then also, how are the major advertising platforms helping to finance junk news sites that are reporting on COVID-19? What we did is we looked at 830 domains that were actively publishing news and information on COVID-19. We had a sample of professional news and information, and we had a sample of junk news and disinformation. How we have identified is we were drawing from a sample that our team has labeled during the US election in 2016, and then also during the midterms in 2018, and again during the European Parliament election in 2019. And then we also screened all sorts of external fact checkers, which were reporting on disinformation and conspiracy theories having to do with COVID-19. We also used a couple of tools to look into, on the one hand, content headers, and then also a commercial search engine optimization tool called SEMrush that gives you all sorts of helpful stats. And so the first helpful stat is domain authority. So domain authority basically is an indicator for how likely you are to see a certain page when you're trying to access it through a search engine, like, of course, for example, Google. And so what you're seeing here is that on the left hand, we have our professional news outlets, at least a sample of them that were performing best, and we have the junk news and disinformation outlets on the other side. And so what you're seeing here is that a lot of the junk news and disinformation outlets were really getting excellent scores. So for search engine optimization, an authority above 60 is a very good authority to have, which means you're very visible on the web. And then something else that we thought was really shocking is that here, I think these are the top 20 or so, and we see an outlet like Politico, or also German Süddeutsche, which has the same kind of domain authority as Russia Today. So that is really, making it very tangible that if you're using search, you are as likely to come across a Politico as you are to come across a Russia Today when you're seeking information. Next, we also looked at backlinks. So backlinks is something that is also going into search engine optimization, and it basically is a measure for how many pages are linking to your page, and the more pages you have linking to your page, the better, and even better if these pages that are linking to you are high authority sources. So we did look into that, and first of all, what you can see here is the number of backlinks that junk news and disinformation pages had. 80% of our junk news domains have more than 1 million backlinks, and more than 30 had over 10 million backlinks. So that is a tremendous amount of backlinks, which means they're very visible. They have a lot of pages that are referring to them, and that in turn then means that it is easy to find these pages when you're seeking information. We also looked a little bit into who are the pages that are linking to these junk news and disinformation domains. You can see the top 2 referring sites listed here, which already, Hall Lindsay was linking a lot to the top 10 sources. But we did another thing, which is we were looking into what are universities doing, and also what are pages like the White House doing, for example. And what we found is that a lot of universities, including Oxford, by the way, were linking to these pages, and either unknowingly quoting them as a source, as a credible source, which is the worst thing to happen, but then also actually for pointing to them and saying, like, this is RT.com or zerohatch.com. This is a terrible page which has been reporting misinformation, but we're still putting a link here, which then means that in turn is actually more visible, especially if you have a University of Oxford, if you have a Harvard or a Georgetown linking to these pages, because obviously those are high authority sites, giving more authority and credibility to these junk and disinformation domains. The last thing we did is we looked a little bit into markup and advertising. So markup basically is how is a site sort of formatted to make it more legible and to make it easier to pull out information for Google, for Facebook, for Twitter. So that, for example, is it could be a link preview, it could be how a picture is formatted. And we saw that both professional news and junk news are really optimizing for social media. No surprise here. Facebook was the most important markup to optimize for. Here we saw junk news and disinformation optimizing slightly more than professional news. So I think no surprise given the state of the internet in 2020. And we also looked a little bit into advertising platforms that had ad space on professional news and junk news pages. Here again, very widespread, both among professional news and junk news and disinformation pages. But it's still, again, it's very interesting to see that, of course, you have Google ads, you have Amazon ads that are directly funding disinformation pages. It is something that I think many in our community have pointed out as a problem that we don't quite know what to do about, except for blacklisting, and that is also comes with a lot of problems. but still, of course, very interesting to see the data behind that. So to sum up, junk news sites have a high domain authority. That means they are highly visible and they are easy to discover. They actually display evidence of professional search engine optimization. We have major academic and major government sites that are backlinking to junk news sources, often unwittingly, and boosting their reputation and their visibility even more. And we have an underlying layer of mainstream industry advertising that is funding junk news and disinformation on COVID-19. So that was it for me. Looking forward to your questions on this later. I hope I more or less kept to the 7 minutes. I'm feeling like I didn't.
Thank you very much, Lisa Maria. Really great remarks and presentation, and I can see that it stimulated a lot of interest in the chat, and so hopefully we can get the interventions of some of the people who are responding to it as we move into the discussion. Thank you very much for that. And I think it would be really interesting to come back not only to you but to the other speakers for the sort of mapping across to what the domain industry is doing, because looking at the domains in the right-hand column that are spreading misinformation about COVID, not one of them uses the strings that we would be looking for in registries. It doesn't mean that this is the whole of the problem in either case, but it might be interesting for us to come back to those differences and similarities, and also, of course, the very important point about that you made at the end about how those junk news sites are really keying into the advertising ecosystem, helping to drive traffic through search and also fund their activities through advertising. So thank you very much for that, and let's come back to those issues and, of course, the questions being raised in the chat. Antoine Shotarov from the Youth URID Committee. Great to have your participation here in the inaugural meeting of this dynamic coalition. The floor is yours for your remarks. Thank you for joining us, and please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I also have several slides, so I would like to share my screen. I received a message that I am disabled to share it, so can you grant me access? Okay, now so, it's granted.
I think that
so I believe
IGF
that
team are doing
you can
that.
see my screen right now.
Yes, we can
okay,
see
so
your screen.
First, thank you for the opportunity to participate here with all of you. And thank you for your attendance. This is my first participation in IGF event, so thank you. The opportunity to participate in this event and to have this meeting today shows the great possibilities that internet provides. As we all know, the great possibilities comes with high risk. And in 2020, the world has faced the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused dramatic effects on all fields: economy, healthcare, social, and etc. But if there is anything positive in 2020, I believe that this is the fostering effect of COVID-19 on innovation, and thus also on digitalization. It is estimated that 3 to 5 years of digitalization has happened in less than 9 months in 2020. Now more than ever, every business needs to be online in order to survive. Also, public structures needed and still need to digitalize fast to answer to the people's needs. But all of this raises the danger caused by the issues that we already know, like data leakage and fake news. And in the digitalized world, leakage of data is one of the biggest dangers, no matter if we speak about personal or corporate or administrative data. Just to give you all a sense of the issue, I will say that In 2019, the economic loss due to leakage of data globally is estimated by IBM and Fonneman Institute ranging between $1.25 and $8.19 million depending on the country and in the industry. And between 2014, as you can see on the graph, and 2019, the amount has risen from 3.5 to almost $4 million on average per country. And again, it is different for the different industries in different countries and companies. And what about the fake news? The University of Baltimore estimated annually global loss of around $78 billion. As we all understand, these figures speak for themselves. In 2020, certain activities made this danger even greater than before. I will share with you two very simple examples. The first one is related to working from home. Working from home, the majority of the countries in the world, because of the pandemic, advised their staff and their working staff to work from home if it's possible. But this also raises the danger because working from home is not as safe as working from office. And because of the network, because of the internet provider, because of the whole security infrastructure that is being used in the offices. The second simple example is related to the healthcare innovation products that have been launched this year because of the pandemic or related to the pandemic. For example, different apps monitoring people's health conditions or apps that help to follow all contacts of COVID-19 positive person or apps related to telemedicine. All these services collect certain private data, and it's very important this data to be safely managed and used only for certain activities for which the different user has agreed. Just imagine if this is breached by hackers, and thus they will be able to know your health condition and also know your location at real time, which of course may endanger your life. Another major danger in 2020 is related to fake news related to COVID-19 articles, which are spread worldwide. The great danger comes because many people believe in them, and this results not only on negative economic results, but also on life losses. Honestly speaking, we can speak many more about danger, but I would like to add at the end something about the solution. I believe that the solution to these dangers come only based on joint efforts by the stakeholders, because these dangers cannot be fought individually. We need to fight them as a team. And fighting fake news can be done through re-establishing the trust in the basic institutions of the democratic society. But as you understand, this is not a simple solution, and it takes time and needs joint effort. Great example of this is what Pablo Bello said a little bit earlier about their joint cooperation with the World Health Organization and also with many governments. This is the way how we can fight together such type of issue. And the other issue about the data leakage, the only way to fight it, again, it's with joint efforts and with preparedness. So thank you thank you for the opportunity, and I'm staying here for questions and discussions.
Antoine, thank you very much for that overview and really emphasizing the need for joint efforts between all stakeholders. This isn't a simple problem to solve, but that you make an excellent point, which really builds on Pablo's remarks about how the pandemic has also just hastened digitization in an amazingly rapid way. For those of us who've been around for a while, we've been predicting the growth of interactions like this based on video conferencing, and yet we've been a bit puzzled about why that hasn't taken off. But this is now that, it really is the sort of necessity being the mother of invention, and the fact that people still need to communicate, still need to have togetherness, and the digital environment is there for us, but at the same time we need to restore trust. Thank you very much. I'm sure we will come back to a lot of the themes that you have raised. What I'd like to do before just calling on our final speaker, Alberto Rabakin, is just to invite anybody who'd like to take the floor. I have Paulina and Graham Bunton in my list of people who would like to make a contribution. We've put you all as panelists so that you can take the floor. So just write in the chat if you would like to join my list, and then we can get the discussion really started and shared amongst all of us. So with that, Alberto, can I call on you to take the floor for your remarks? Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you for the invitation to be here. It's really a pleasure, and I really listened very carefully to the previous presentation. I think all the speakers had a very interesting point. And so I'm here to give you a little bit an overview where we are with the fight on disinformation, and in particular on what the unit where I work in it's following very closely, which is the code of practice on disinformation. I think I agree with what has been said before, that internet and the social media provides greater opportunity also for making the democratic process more participatory and inclusive. Yet we all are aware how this new technology can be misused to disseminate disinformation on a scale and with a speed and precision of targeting that it was unprecedented. Disinformation is not a new problem, but the technology has made this problem very pervasive. And so we need to do something. And we started some years ago in the Commission on defining a strategy to try to limit the impact of this phenomenon. We are all aware that this phenomenon will not go away, and that we will need to continuously work, because the technology is evolving, and so the policy need to adapt to the technology evolution. So one of the signature initiatives originating out of the Commission April 2018 communication on tackling online disinformation was the code of practice on disinformation that was after, let's say, laborious work, but very compressed work that involved several stakeholders, lead to this code of practice that this was signed by major online platforms. So we are talking about Google, Twitter, Facebook, and now we have also Microsoft, TikTok, and other platforms involved, and also the advertising industry that was involved in the process and signed the code. So the code was, let's say, was designed to limit the vulnerabilities of certain online technologies and services. There are, let's say, 5 pillars within this code, and they look to limit the possibility of website purveyors of disinformation to monetize ads, increase transparency of political ads, limit the presence of fake accounts and bots often involved in disinformation campaign, empower users to make them more resilient to disinformation, and empower researchers in order to better understand the phenomenon of disinformation. So these are the 5 pillars of the code. The code, let's say, was signed and started to be implemented in October 2018. And in like 2 months ago, we published the assessment after 1 year of the implementation of the code. So the assessment is done on the work that the platform did between October 2018 and September 2011. It took a while to make this assessment because it was we counted on a lot of contribution. First of all, the self-assessment of the platform. We then have the report of the European Regulators Group for Audiovisual Media, which is maybe better known under ERGA, and a study by an independent consultant, and the Commission report on the 2019 election to the European Parliament. So it was a very, let's say, rich set of information that we have used to generate this assessment. And of course, the code, it's a unique example of self-regulation on this information and applies only in Europe at the moment, although there are other parts of the world that are interested on having the code implemented in their region. And we have to acknowledge that the code has been an important and necessary first step towards creating a more transparent and accountable online platform ecosystem. I think one of the issues that reduced the trust on the digital media is the lack of transparency. And certainly this code has improved on that, in that direction, because we have now a framework for a structured dialogue between the relevant industry actors, the Commission, the national authorities. Therefore, we have that through this framework, we are better informed on the platform policies against disinformation within the European Union. So this is, I would say, a general positive achievement. There are, of course, also substantive progress. There is also substantive progress that is being made in the implementation of the code. I don't want to go over a long list, but certainly most of you might be aware of the fact that in view of the European election, all the major platforms created ad libraries where they included the political ads that were, let's say, used during the electoral campaign. And then this library became also available for national elections. So this was certainly an important achievement, although we are well aware that this repository presents a limitation that needs to be overcome. Another improvement was regarding the integrity of services. We saw that the platform took action against accounts using manipulative techniques to artificially amplify the reach and the impact of false and misleading information. Also, they started to provide more information, more detail on their efforts to remove or prevent the creation of fake accounts and the use of malicious bots. And also, they also improved their communication regarding the action they have taken to limit coordinated disinformation campaign by hostile actors. So also under this point of view, we have better transparency of what they do, which is of course important also to understand their impact on freedom of expression, of course. Empowerment of consumers, they certainly improve and make investment to give provenance to trustworthy information sources. And I think here it's usually, has been already said by Pablo, not only WhatsApp, but also all the other platforms have created spaces where they promote information coming from public health authorities, including the World Health Organization and professional media also. So this is something that they achieved during the crisis and was not achieved before, and so we were really pleased that to see their prompt reaction during the crisis. They also we have to acknowledge also they have increased cooperation with the fact checkers in many EU countries. In particular, this has also happened during the pandemic and the infodemic related to the pandemic. So it's worth to mention here that the Commission has issued a communication in June related to the COVID-19 disinformation, and one of the results of this communication is that we are now receiving monthly reports from the signatories of the Code of Practice, where they detail what they have done to tackle online disinformation. So this is again another improvement from the transparency point of view. Of course, these are the positive side, but there are also shortcomings. And in particular, there is inconsistent and incomplete application of the code across platform and member states. Certain tools, for instance, for the citizens, for the user, are not available in all member states, are not available in all languages. So this is something that should be overcome. We didn't see that much effort in limiting the online ads to appear on websites that are purveyors of disinformation. I think what Lisa showed before, it's a clear example. We see how the ads goes more into websites that are, let's say, more inclined to have low quality information than to websites that have a higher quality information, or information that is created according to professional and ethical standards. So even here, the list is quite long, but I don't want to go too much into the detail. I want to, however, emphasize an outstanding problem, which is the fact that access to platforms data for research purposes remain a major concern. There are only bilateral agreement between platform and university to access limited sets of data, but this is not enough in order to make the researchers in the condition to better study the disinformation phenomenon on all platforms, because we know that on certain platforms is easier than on other platforms. Also, the crisis, the infodemic linked to the crisis, shows the importance of better uniform definition of certain behaviors or certain, let's say, issues that are linked to disinformation, because having a better set of uniform definition will help also in defining a more coherent set of policies to tackle the issues that are at stake. So that's very important to progress on that.
Thank you, Alberto. If I may, just, I'm sorry, not to, is it possible to wrap up your remarks?
Yes,
so that,
of course.
that we can?
I was coming to an end.
I thought you were, but I thought I'd just mention. Thank you.
So there are areas that are not covered by the code, which also, and in particular, these areas, there's the lack of key performance indicator, and which are missing. So it's very difficult to assess in an independent way, and by the civil society as well, to what has been done by the platform. If we are not able to define this key performance indicator, and we don't have data on this to measure the indicators. And of course, the self-regulatory approach so far has been limited to the signatory of the code, which includes the bigger platform, but not all the platforms. So this has created also an asymmetry between those ones that are signatory of the code and those ones that are not signatory of the code. So I'm done.
Alberto, thank you so much for those wide-ranging remarks and emphasizing the code of practice, and also, highlighting positive actions taken, but also the imbalances between the large platforms where we've had all of the spotlight and perhaps other environments which Lisa Maria has covered. What I'd like to do now, we have just 15 minutes or so left, and what I'd like to do is to call on, first of all, Graham Bunton and Paulina Malaya from Centre, Graham Bunton of Two Cows, Paulina, just to make a brief intervention for a couple of minutes. But there are also many more who've been putting such interesting remarks in the chat. Maybe Humaira Rabab, Megan Richards, Laurie Schulman, Olivier, Miguel. If we could try for these 15 minutes just to do a quick round of remarks and inputs. And then if we have time at the end, I'll just wrap back through the panelists for just very final remarks. But it's great to have all of the chat. So Graham, can I start with you? Thank you for joining us. I know it's early. And then I will go to Paulina and then maybe Humaira. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Emily, and thanks for having me today. I'll try and keep this brief and share maybe a little bit about our experience as a registrar in COVID and some of the issues we were having, and hopefully that resonates with some people. So my name's Graham. I'm the head of policy for Two Cows. Two Cows is the world's second largest domain name registrar, although primarily wholesale. We sell to other companies, not by and large to the general public. So we recognized relatively early on in the pandemic that this was pretty exceptional circumstance, and that we needed to be a bit more engaged, proactive, and try different approaches to respond appropriately. So, by and large, as a registrar but not a hosting company, we don't typically interact with the domains that we on our platform to look at them, to see what content is on them. That's really outside our purview and typically outside the appropriate course of action for us. So, pandemic hits, this seems different. We should maybe take a closer look at what's going on. So we set up some queries, some keywords, and began looking at the registrations as they were coming in every day. This sort of peaked in late March for us, where we were seeing something close to 300 registrations a day. That's sort of by the end of July, we've got about 17,000 total. And, as of today, something around 22,000 related, COVID-related registrations, which is a lot. And so we were trying to assess them for harm because this is, again, such an exceptional thing. So we were looking at them by hand, a team of people every day clicking on those domains to see if there's anything there. By and large, about 70% were just parked. They weren't doing anything. There's a variety of stores selling PPE and, blogs and websites with some information. And the stuff we found was actually harmful or potentially harmful. So let's say like fake tests, fake cures. For us, harmful really meant like presented an imminent threat to human harm, was less than 0.5%. It was a very small amount. In trying to assess these domains, we looked at how to make this process more efficient. There were lists of COVID domains being circulated amongst the DNS community. They were by and large terrible for the most part. They included, there was not a lot of robust activity in creating them. So people were putting all registrations in with abusive registrations, and then someone else would repackage that and add some more onto it. And so, this list of here's all the bad domains was including things like the official South African response page. It was including things like hospitals and healthcare providers. And so we were in a really tricky spot where we didn't have any reliable sources of information to act on. And so really did have to go through this exceptionally slow and manual process.
Thank you.
Oh, I've got just
one more thing.
Just two more things. So, when we were getting real abusive registration information from law enforcement, those were often not at all related to the strings we were looking for. And so we really had no mechanism to find them. Or they were using subdomains for which we have no control. So if I'm thinking about, what we can do about this sort of thing, it's better feeds, it's better data, better quality, more information, and more evidence. And then really that the thorny bits of this for us were really just totally outside the world of the DNS. It was, here's a blog, it's got 4 posts of sort of generic COVID information and one that is clearly dangerous disinformation. Who assesses if this is harmful? And it really felt inappropriate that was us as a DNS operator. And there is enough of that, and no one sort of within our community and law enforcement or governments really felt like they were in a place to deal with those sorts of issues. And that was a real challenge for us. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you so much, Graham. And you really highlight the limits of what each actor is able to do, but we are all part of the same ecosystem. And, that the different ways in which people are using these domain names, sometimes harmful, sometimes not, in fact, very little, and the importance of data quality in the lists that are circulating for people who, want to take action to help. Paulina, thank you very much, Graham. Paulina, can I just ask you to take the floor? And then after that, may I ask Humaira to take the floor as well? Just very brief comments if you can, everyone, so that we can fit in as many remarks as possible.
Thank you, Emily, very much. And thanks for this opportunity to speak up today. So I will try to be as brief as possible. And just quickly, I'm Paulina and I'm from Centre, which is the Association for European Country Code Top-Level Domain Registries, such as .pl and .eu. And Centre, we greatly welcome this initiative. And I would just like to also briefly highlight on the point about data that also Graham already spoke about, and which is also very prominently highlighted in the name of this coalition. And primarily, we feel that there is a need to discuss the issue of inconsistent reporting of the scale of the problem, primarily within the so-called DNS abuse discussions, and also specifically during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So the research that Centre conducted at the start of the pandemic is fairly consistent with also the figures that ICANN has reported, and also what Graham talked about before, that only a few dozen domain names amongst the tens of thousands that got reported by some security companies were truly problematic and could be associated with some type of abuse. And of course, these domain names do pose a real danger, there is no doubt. However, we need to accurately measure the problem so that we can identify the best way to solve it. And we see that the low amount of domain names associated with abuse that we have identified as part of our research, this number is actually manageable with the regular processes that are already in place across the domain name industry. And specifically, namely, with close cooperation with public competent authorities such as law enforcement, judiciary processes, etc. So lastly, I just would like to highlight our expectation for this dynamic coalition, and we feel that this is the right place to work on the methodology and agree on the data sets that could help support the public policy objectives and increase trust. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paulina, and thank you very much for highlighting your wishes for this dynamic coalition. We very much wanted it to be a forum in which there could be, it could generate an evidence base for policymakers to help, combat harms, but also not overreach into legitimate activities. Humaira, if I may, can I?
Sorry, Emily, I think you've muted yourself.
I did mute myself, but thank you very much for your remarks in the chat. I wanted to give you the floor just to either contribute to the discussion or raise a question.
Thank you. So I worked as a public policy officer for the Australian government, and I was leading the government's response on tackling the sharing of Christchurch attack that happened last year on social media platform. And we introduced a legislation that gave the eSafety Commissioner powers to regulate and direct platforms to take down that sort of information. But this was all based on purely reporting method. We then started working on tackling disinformation this year in relation to COVID-19. Surprisingly, it came from the toilet paper issue that was in Australia. So now my question to the panel is, in building the relationship between data and trust, which the panel already mentioned isn't just a digital problem, but a real problem. But often with COVID-19, what we're seeing is misinformation from online is being shared amongst family members and neighbors on WhatsApp platform. Now, how do we collaborate and tackle that because WhatsApp is a very closed-off platform?
Thank you very much for that question. What I'm going to do is take a couple more interventions, and then I hope we'll be able to get that answered, but a really key point there. Thank you, Humara, for that. Can I call on you, Megan Richards, to raise your questions or highlight some of the issues you've been doing in the chat? Thank you.
I forgot to there. I'm unmuted now. Thanks, Emily. Very interesting discussion, of course. No, it's similar to what Humaira said, and many others have mentioned this too. That facts are facts. Unfortunately,
not alternative.
One person's yes, we sometimes have alternative facts. But I was just wondering if there's a technical or legal or statistical way that one can identify fact-based facts by footnoting. There must be some ways, and perhaps some of the participants have ideas of how one can show that this is really factually reinforced information that is being provided, which will then, of course, lead to more trust. So that was really the question that I had. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to may I call on you, Laurie Schulman, because you've been very active and you've raised a couple of questions, and also Miguel Perez Subayas as well. And then I think I'll go back for some very final quick interventions from our panel. Thank you.
Right. Hi, it's Laurie Schulman. And, a few thoughts come to mind. Of course, the values. Because I was very struck by the list of the fake news versus the non-fake news, the left and the right columns, not even labeling them fake and non-fake, because there are huge swaths of people, and we've seen it most recently this week with the US elections, that view certain news sources that have been traditionally viewed as trustworthy as untrustworthy, names that we saw on the left. And so I think it could be problematic to draw such bright lines. I think it's, and it goes to Megan's point, how do we verify? How do we tell the world this is real when reality now, or the truth, is looked at as something relative rather than absolute? I think that's a fundamental question. It's a question we see in jurisprudence, but we will now see it every day in our lives on social media. How do where do we put a value system against judging a fact? Number one, facts are facts, but we're now living in a world with alternative facts. I think verification, how we verify, is key. Doing it in an automated way. A lot of people have talked about ways in the domain system of verifying ownership. And we know that can clap back against, or not, but be counter to some of the concerns people have for individual privacy rights. But at the same time, if we don't hold individuals accountable for what they post, how do we get to that truth element? And then, being in the field that I'm in terms of trust, in the trust crisis, one of the things here, although we're talking about COVID, something that is clearly not something subject to an intellectual property right or discussion, this does go to a broader issue of, but how do we identify trust, what trust is? And I do feel compelled, given my advocacy remit, to say that there are, when the intellectual property rights are discussed in different contexts throughout IGF and ICANN and in the rest, any platform where we're talking about rights, that it's very important that rights as rights sometimes are forgotten, that they emanate from points of trust.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to cut you off. Everybody who's spoken today, I think we could all talk for hours about this, because people are making such relevant and thoughtful interventions. Really, thank you so much for that. I would just like to ask Miguel to take the floor if there is time and if you're able to. And then I'm sorry, we're going to probably have to wrap up. I'll try and put the question to Pablo if we have time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is a quick question: is that we have a lack of competition in several domains of internet, for example, in social networks or in WhatsApp. Then we need more competition, and also we need to to be more interoperable or interconnected. We need to connect the social networks. In the past, we connected the phone networks and the internet networks, and now we have social networks. We need to be interconnected in the way that a user from WhatsApp can talk with a user from Telegram, for example. That is a specific question for Pablo.
Pablo, you have a couple of questions actually about interconnection, taking Miguel's point, but also I want to come back to Humaira's point just very quickly, if you may, in a half minute, about sharing within family members on WhatsApp. Pablo, we have your very brief remarks on that before I close the session?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Very quickly. The first, we believe encryption is fundamental for privacy and security, but because of that, it's not possible to moderate content in an encrypted platform. This is a key issue for WhatsApp. You can't take down content on WhatsApp platform. So this is what we can do, and what are we doing? First, reduce virality by design, and we introduce a lot of friction to reduce virality. Second, combat bulk messaging, because there are some providers sending spamming on WhatsApp. This is something that is against our terms of services, and we combat that. Third, offer channels for accurate information and fact-checking. I think the collaboration with fact-checkings are very important, but also with international organizations and governments providing accurate information. And finally, I think at the end, the most important are the user's responsibility. So this is very important to have a broader conversation and to teach actually users in how to be responsible using the tools and the platform of the internet and the digital technology. This is a key issue. Regarding interoperability, well, it's not possible to interoperate platform that has different technologies, and actually Telegram is not encrypted by design, so it's a technical issue that is not easy to fix.
Okay, thank you very much, Pablo. I would like to come back to all the panelists, and I'd also like to call on many of the others in the chat. Unfortunately, we're totally out of time, but this has been such a wonderful start to this conversation, and I hope that you will all join the Dynamic Coalition mailing list, and I hope we can continue our conversation on that. Very much thank you to our wonderful speakers today, and to all of the participants who've made such great and thoughtful comments, either on the microphone or in the chat. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or evening, and let's keep in touch. I think there's a lot we can do together. Thank you.